welcome Liz Plank to the stage. And please join me in welcoming the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going very well.
How about you guys? Is everyone good? Everyone's got their cameras out. Should we do just like a smile so everyone gets the one photo? What? Okay, great. You got it? Everyone's got it? All the reactions? Donc, premièrement, je veux vous remercier d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je pense que c'est important de souligner que c'est quand même rare qu'il y ait un leader d'un pays, même si c'est un pays démocratique, qui s'assoit avec une journaliste et qui parle de gouvernement ouvert, qui parle de transparence. Alors, j'apprécie beaucoup l'opportunité de faire ça avec vous.
Ben, moi, l'opportunité d'encourager le journaliste, de respecter ce que vous faites en tant que travail, c'est essentiel. On voit à un moment où il y a beaucoup d'attaques sur les médias, que les médias sont réellement un pilier essentiel de nos démocraties. C'est toujours la première chose à partir quand on glisse vers l'autoritarisme. Donc, je suis très content de pouvoir parler aux journalistes et très content de parler avec toi aujourd'hui, Liz.
Great. I actually put in a request for President Trump to do this in Washington, but he hasn't gone back to me, so maybe you can tell him to check his DMs. You know, next time you see him.
I'll get right on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, okay, let's get right into it. What are we talking about? What's your sock game today? Let's talk about the elephant in the room because, you know, we're going to end up talking about it.
I'm open and transparent about my socks. That's the important part of it.
Great. Appreciate that. Let's talk about the other elephant in the room. Mark and Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg were subpoenaed and did not show up. Are subpoenas not mandatory anymore?
You know, I think one of the really important things that is an awakening right now by governments, but by citizens, and increasingly by platforms, is the fact that an increasing part of our lives happens online in a way that governments who traditionally have had that role of keeping people safe, making sure there's fair access, making sure that they're able to have opportunities to grow in the public sphere, we don't have much in the way of levers over this new virtual realities and the platforms that people use increasingly every day. And what that means is that platforms now have to think differently than they used to. I mean, corporations used to be able to focus just on making money and delivering a good product to their users. Now we're at a time where big companies like Facebook and others have to be aware of their responsibilities towards the society that they are both drawing from and contributing to. And I really hope that these conversations will keep going at the highest level and that Mark and Sheryl and others will participate.
Do you think that we treat social media companies differently, right? So if the CEO of a cigarette company was caught doing, malfeasance or caught doing sort of negligent behavior that would have consequences on entire elections and our democracy and even lead to, people dying, wouldn't it be outrageous for them not to show up and explain themselves?
It took an awful long time to hold cigarette companies to account, many, many decades. Hopefully we've learned to accelerate the pace, but I think fundamentally, we can't look at platforms as automatic antagonists. We recognize that the solution doesn't lie in government's heavy hand over our internet, over our public spaces. There should be ongoing dialogues that involve citizens and citizens having actual choices about what they do. That will lead us to a better and safer online world in every sense of the word. That's a process that we are part of, but at the same time, there is a broad range of differences. What tools a reasonable, democratic, open government like Canada or others might find extremely useful and good to have on, protecting citizens and encouraging competition and assuring that platforms take their responsibilities seriously, in a different country might be a tool for oppression of citizens or control or really attacking free speech. So we really have to have a very complex conversation about how to move forward. I mean, that freedom of expression, freedom of speech is so fundamental to our democracies that, of course, as soon as we say, well, we have to limit hate speech, we have to protect citizens, there are some really tricky decisions we have to have, and we have to have them in conversation.
Right. You bring up free speech, which is such an important topic, and I think, I've talked to a lot of different experts who have different, opinions about what we should do in terms of these issues with, the future of tech and the future of data and privacy, and some of them say government shouldn't get into the business of regulating this. And if I can use Ted Cruz as an example, I know this is a global audience, and so Ted Cruz is basically the second most famous Canadian after you. He is a senator in the United States, and he recently, talked about space pirates. Was talking about cybersecurity, but used the term space pirates. And then a lot of people thought that was funny, and it created this Twitter moment, and then he was upset that all of the lefty, snarky tweets about the space pirates were being shown, but not his response to it. So I would be afraid if Ted Cruz would be in power, that he would want to, not allow certain things and regulate the internet in a way that wouldn't show, content that is not, good for him, right? That doesn't make him look good.
Well, I think anytime a government looks for making new laws or regulations or legislation, you have to think about what's going to happen under future governments, not just what you're going to do, but what other governments could do with these same powers. And quite frankly, that reflection is again, something that we're in very early days on in terms of what tools exist to keep people safe in an increasingly important and essential for business, for community, for opportunity online space. And that's where I really feel, the meeting I had in Paris a couple of weeks ago for the Christchurch call to counter terrorism online, involved some very good conversations with folks from the tech sector who recognize a piece of that responsibility, because when you see a toxicity beginning to spread on platforms, a lot of good people step away from those platforms, and you end up with just pools of toxicity that people will find other ways of having these conversations. So it's very much in the tech sector and platforms' interest to try and make sure that they're creating spaces that are valuable to citizens and community. And we always talk about the fact that there are things that happen in a virtual world that would never happen in a public square in a conversation between two people without the police stepping in. We haven't got there yet to understanding how to manage virtual spaces in a way that is consistent with the norms and values that we've created for acting in public spheres, even though how you act in one country or in one culture can be very different from another. There's always going to be lots of variations. But I think there's a fundamental level of respect and interaction that government does have a role in trying to encourage. But like I said, I'd much rather do it in partnership with platforms. But if it comes down to it, we will take measures that we will regret having to take, because our imperative is to keep citizens safe.
Right, and it should be a priority, and sometimes I think it's not clear if that's their biggest priority. So, you brought up the topic of toxicity on these platforms, which I'm very familiar with. You can look at my mentions; they're not that great. But everyone's mentions are difficult, right? We have these spaces where, to your point, it's kind of, or I think in a speech you said it's the wild, wild west, right? Where everything is allowed to go on. But this is what drives me crazy. So these are the most sophisticated platforms in the world, right? The world of tech, it's innovation, it's disrupting everything. There's literally a filter to where I can turn my entire body into a hot dog. But there's no filter to, tease out white supremacy or to make sure that there's no neo-Nazis on Twitter. Why is that the case? Why aren't the tools that sophisticated? Is it that there's a priority problem, or?
Listen, you're asking me. I'm a former math teacher who's now a prime minister, so my level of expertise, I did learn how to code in C++ a long time ago, but my understanding of the algorithms is very much as a user, not as a creator. But I also know that one of the ways that the internet has been set up in terms of successful social media is by eliciting emotions from people. And we always know from politics that it's easier to elicit emotions of shock or anger or disgust or outrage than it is to get people thinking meaningfully, reasonably, responsibly about various things. And as we look at a model around so many of these platforms that have been maximized for liking or for sharing or for giving you that quick hit of, a shocking image, you're not going to believe what this person said about this, or you won't believe what this former child star looks like now. Those kinds of things are designed to draw us in. And that's something that's always been there for human beings. I mean, there's a reason the National Enquirer was stacked at the supermarket counter on the checkout. People would consume what is easy, and we need to reflect on the fact that everything gets so much easier to shock and outrage that involving people in meaningful, reflective, positive, constructive discourse, which has always been difficult, is a new challenge that we're going to have to reflect on as we see our politics, as we're facing an election this fall, descend or trend towards amplification of easy emotions rather than allaying of fears and putting forward robust, complex solutions to robust, complex problems.
And do you think that the way that and it's not just platforms, it's the media, we were talking about this before, that backstage, that, there's so many positive things happening in the world, and you turn on the news and you don't see a lot of them, right? You'll see bad, 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 and then like a cat that got saved, from a fire and something, right? But there's so many actually positive stories out there that don't involve cats, that involve human beings doing amazing things. And I wonder, this is literally rewiring our brains. And I wonder what you think about the idea that this is causing us to be in this tribalism, right? Everyone talks about that, right? That we're identifying with what we hate instead of what we love, right? Instead of building community, we're building tribes.
Well, I think one of the things that comes through that tribalism is we're seeing an age of skepticism, if not cynicism, about our collective institutions, whether it be the judiciary, whether it be government, whether it be private companies or multinationals, and there's reason to be cynical about some of those, but there is an eroding of trust in sort of the public good and the public responsibilities of our institutions. And that's why, one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of this open government initiative, this idea of showing citizens what's going on and rebuilding those trust measures. I mean, one of the most visited sites on the Canada government website is our mandate letters, where we laid out specifically what we expected what I asked each of our ministers to do and accomplish as their responsibility. And laid onto that, we put forward a mandate tracker that lists the ones we've accomplished, lists the ones we haven't accomplished and have not succeeded at, lists the ones that we're ongoing on, the ones that we're facing challenges on. I think that kind of accountability, I mean, we're seeing people get elected with not much of a platform anymore, not much of an idea other than we're going to help people and we're going to make things the way they used to be, and we're going to keep out the bad guys and everyone's going to be happy. That's not a platform. That's a bunch of emotions built together to try and get you to respond. Where's the plan? Well, the concrete, reasonable, rational plan has fallen a little bit out of fashion. So no wonder people are getting a little more skeptical about government's actual or institutional